Hey, you guys, welcome back to Dental Unfiltered. I'm Matt Brown. I'm here with my normal co-host, Dr. Andrew Vallo. Today's episode is about an instant profit boost in 2025, one that Andrew found. And it's a little bit about being apprehensive to change and then having a mindset shift and embracing change. I can tell you in my life at Energize, there's me and there's Ryan. A lot of people don't get to hear from or see Ryan. And Ryan drives change, like is always finding places to force change, find little profit centers we're missing out on, finding places to improve things for our clients. I mean, like when I say this guy hunts for change, it's like every day I get a phone call like, hey, dude, I found something. We should go do this. And I'm kind of like Andrew. Sometimes I get apprehensive. I don't like fixing things that aren't broken, but I'm lucky I have someone in my life who forces that change. And Andrew found one, and I think it's one that I hear docs talk about this all the time. And I'll let Andrew explain what it is. And docs kind of like say, well, should I really do this to my patients? And there's in the Facebook groups, there's always anonymous posts and regular posts about this subject and about, is this okay to do? Should we be doing it? How will the patients perceive it? And the reality is, if you're providing good service, have a great experience, your patients are going to handle it. A few might gawk at what he's going to talk about. But I think in today's world, with rising costs of everything, these kinds of things are being talked about in all types of businesses, not dental. And I think he explained to me he had some apprehension about this subject, and he found a profit center that in 2025 he's going to deploy that is going to boost things for him. Took a little overcoming some apprehension about it, but he was open to it, and he did it after kind of digging his feet in a little bit. So Andrew, explain what the profit boost that you found is for 25. And we both have seen the Facebook posts about this subject and about the apprehension. And when I say this subject has some comments on it, I've seen it with 50, 60, 70 comments and people arguing about it and the points of view on it. So Andrew, tell me what the profit boost is and explain it.
Yeah, this is a pretty heated, controversial topic in dentistry, the business of dentistry right now, guys. And it's the question of, should we be passing credit card fees on to patients? So, I'll start by saying that for a long time, I was very against this. And in my mind, it felt like nickel and diming. And I felt like, there were better ways. I would rather focus on increasing our practice revenue or maybe other ways to save some money versus adding this tic-tac credit card fee onto patients. And I felt like it was going to cause problems in our practice, and it was going to, decrease patient acceptance, and it was going to lead to angry patients. But at the same time, I had friendly, healthy debates with friends. So, one of the pioneers of, this in dentistry is good friend, Dr. Paul Nacho Goodman. He's been an advocate for it for a while. And he's trying to, kind of like we're trying to change the mindset of dentists when it comes to abundance versus scarcity. I think he's trying to change the mindset around credit card fees. And so after having countless discussions, seeing Facebook posts, seeing more and more, not only dentists, but businesses go to it. I mean, at this point in time, guys, the majority of things that I buy for my dental offices, if I want to pay with a credit card, I have to pay a fee for it. So I think when you're getting squeezed on that end, you're seeing all these other businesses doing it. You're seeing more and more dentists doing it. You're seeing more and more local restaurants and other places that are doing it. It's kind of the mentality of times change, and and sometimes you've got to adapt. It's like the adapt or die. And I think sometimes we get too stuck in our mindsets, and sometimes we're once we have a view on an issue, we're unwilling to change it. We're unwilling to listen to counter arguments. We're unwilling to consider the alternative, and it's just like, hey, my foot's in the sand. This is how I feel about this, and no one's ever going to change my mind. And so I'm here to tell you guys, like, that's an unhealthy way to go about things. There are many subjects that I feel very adamant about that, in my mind, I probably think I'll never change my mind, but I'm always listening to the information that's out there, especially as new information gets passed along. I'm always reevaluating things. And so basically how this all came to be, obviously it's been in the back of my mind for a long time with all the talk about it. But, as we're going into the new year, and we're growing, but as we're growing and as our revenue is growing, so are our costs. We still have a healthy profit margin, but anytime you open 3 new offices in a 3-week span, you've got a lot of added startup costs. And while we took business loans, there's extra costs on top of the business loans that are going into it. And, you're hiring, we hired God, we probably have hired like 20 new people. I mean, we're well over 50 employees now for our organization. So rising costs, inflation costs, everything else going on. And I started looking at what changes could we make that would immediately increase our profit for 2025. And so, we talked about a few different ideas. But one of the things that just seemed to stand out as the most obvious, easiest way to decrease our overhead without it really having any impact was to pass on these credit card fees. So, we were paying, I believe it was a little bit over 2% per transaction. It's nothing crazy, but small things done repeatedly add up. And when you've got a group of was 4, now 7, hopefully possibly 8 soon practices, that 2.19 whatever percent on all of our credit card charges, that's going to add up to 6 figures of saved overhead for 2025, which is going to be 6 figures added right to our bottom line, to our EBITDA. So, that's going to allow us to continue to improve other aspects. I mean, we're looking at bringing on more leadership team members like regional managers and things like that. So we're looking to add more benefits for our team. So we're trying to make things better within our organization. But as you do that, sometimes it comes with added costs, and sometimes you have to look at ways to save money. And so finally, I came over to what I would say as the dark side, and I came onto this idea, and we are officially. We're sticking with our same merchant service, which is Apex. I know there's other services that offer this, like I think Nada is the one that Paul uses. So you can look into different services, but we had been using Apex merchant services. It was easier for us to stick with them. They offer this option. So all of our offices, the new offices that started off, they're starting off this way. And then as of January 1st, all of our offices will be passing on the credit card fees to patients.
So are you doing it like over a certain price point, or is it 100%?
100%.
Okay. So that's like, I think there's been a progression with this, right? I think that like I got some work done on my Jeep a few months ago. Everyone was like, I off-road, I have a big Jeep and Jeep stuff's expensive. And I remember I went to process my credit card and the Jeep guy's like, hey, I got to charge you 3% because it's over $2,000, whatever it is.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
I think in the past there was like over this point we charge it, right? I think now like I'm going to like restaurants and like honestly, regular businesses not spending a lot of money and they're passing the credit card fee on. And the reality is you can avoid the credit card fee, pay cash or pay something else, right? Yeah. You don't have to pay it. I think what's happened too, I think where the adaptation comes from is if we look at the 90s, what was the percentage of credit card transactions in the 90s versus today? Right? So like very small, right? So let's say we had $1 million in revenue in the 90s in a dental practice. Maybe like 100 grand for the year or something, a small percentage was credit card. Look at the amount of credit card transactions today in a dental practice versus the 90s. It's grown tremendously, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the credit card charge has stayed the same, right? And now with inflation and stuff, like, yeah, this is perfectly acceptable as a business owner to say, hey, consumer, you're seeking the service, you're choosing this payment method. And because of that, it cuts into my already thin margins after inflation and the last few years. I have to pass this on. And then you do, right? And I think consumers, if you would have tried this in 1996, people would have hated your business. But in 2024, it's so common now, right? It's so common. I bet at the front desk, they go, okay. And one thing that's akin to this that I think goes along with this subject, it's a little off subject, but it goes along with it, is deposits for chair time is kind of the same thing. Like if your hairdresser, my wife's hairdresser needs a deposit for share time. You guys are dentists, right?
Yeah. Nail appointments, hair appointments. Yep.
The resistance to this is the same as the resistance to deposit for share time. It's the same emotional resistance from the owner docs, right? And this does two things. Your EBITDA increases by passing on the credit card charge, and the deposit for chair time protects you from your days falling apart. Right?
No, I think you're absolutely right, man. I think that's part of why I came around to it, because I think, for a while, it was a small percentage of businesses that were passing on credit card fees. They were the earlier adapters. And I think it really did have that ick factor. It's like, ooh, like that's kind of shady that they're doing that. But as it's become more mainstream, it's kind of the way the world works now. I mean, and so I think a lot of it's about verbiage, and we're going to be working with our team, about how to discuss this with patients. Like, hey, basically, we've got different payment options available. If you can save some money if you'd like to pay with cash, credit card, or debit card. If you'd like to use credit card, there is or cash, check, or debit card. If you want to use credit card, there is a small fee. Then also we've got financing options where they're paying a financing fee there too, and we're paying a merchant fee. So, I mean, there's different options to choose from. It's up to the patient with which option that they want to choose. But again, I think it's become much more commonplace. I'm not saying it's that there aren't patients that are going to grumble about it, because that there are. But here's the thing to think about is like the ones who get really mad about it or who cause a big fuss about it, they're probably the same patients that are getting really mad at every opportunity that presents itself. So there are some people that unfortunately are just, that's how they are. Maybe they're a little bit grumpier. They like to look for things to complain about. And at the end of the day, will you lose some patients over this policy? It's possible. You might. But like, if someone leaves your office because you're passing on the credit card fee when a lot of other offices and businesses are doing it now, is that really a patient that you wanted at the end of the day? Maybe not. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're the person that's always causing your team a headache, and maybe people aren't going to be that upset to see them, walk out the door. So that's my mentality on it. I'm not here saying that we want to alienate patients or make patients upset. We don't want to get bad reviews. So, I mean, I'm sure there will be some challenges. I'm sure some of my team members will get frazzled at times, when patients get upset or surprised about it. But to your point, it didn't used to be commonplace to take deposits. And for some dental offices, it's still not. But I'll tell you what, I would never in a million years have a dental practice where we didn't take deposits for treatment. So, and same thing with collecting at time of service.
I'll tell you my most successful practices, that's what they do, both.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, they used to be very commonplace in dental offices that they would bill you after your appointment. So you would come in, you wouldn't pay anything that day. You'd get your crown done or cleaning, whatever it was. And then, once they figured out insurance stuff, you had insurance or whatever, they'd send you a bill in the mail and you'd pay it, whenever. And a lot of dental offices had crazy amounts of AR because people just weren't great about paying their bills. I mean, what is easier, having somebody pay while they're in your dental office before they go back to the chair to get treatment done, or sending somebody a letter and trying to call them on the phone to collect payment? I mean, it's a no-brainer. And I think most dentists today, would agree that billing at time of service is the right way to do things as a savvy, smart business owner. But it didn't always used to be that way. And I think when it started to become more mainstream, there were probably a lot more dentists that resisted it. But it's that same mentality of, as things change, as we find better ways to do things, as the industry develops and adapts, we can either adapt with it or we can get left behind. So
I think too, like, let's put it in really simple terms, right? Let's try to figure out and name one other service provider or product that's in the multiples of thousands of dollars that had to go to school and develop a really hard skill for 10 years, had to take a tremendous amount of risk in the form of loans for the practice and their education, that you can pay whenever you want or pay later, not pay ahead of time. I don't think there is one, right? Like, I think dentists deserve, I think it's just respect. Honestly, I think it's respecting yourself. Like, I developed this skill. I put everything into this practice. I want to service you to the highest standard. And part of me being able to do that is to get paid up front and to be able to mitigate some of these fees and stuff. I think you deserve that as a dentist after all you've been through to develop that skill and all the risk you took before you ever made $1. I mean, how many docs acquisition a practice and they're $1.5 million in debt between that and their student loans, and they haven't made $1 of profit yet, and they dedicate 10 years of their life to it? Yeah, you have the right to ask for a deposit for chair time. You have the right to say, I don't want to pay the credit card fee. And also look at this. Guys, you're a valued part of society. You're giving back smiles and people's oral health. Think about all the things that people spend their money on that are way expensive. and you have to do deposits, you have to do all these things. Like I had to when I got my Jeep worked on last time, I had to prepay for the parts, I had to schedule it 3 weeks out, and I had to pay the credit card fee. Listen, society values you guys more than my Jeep being lifted 2.5 inches and been a crawl over rocks. That's a personal thing that I value that no one else values. It's worthless to everyone else. You guys deserve the deposit for chair time and deserve the credit card fee.
Well, and I look at it this way too, Matt. Even years ago, when this was a newer thing, and even when I would, go somewhere or go to, pay for something online or whatever it was, and notice they were charging me a credit card fee, even if I grumbled a little bit about it in my head, or was a little bit annoyed or surprised or whatever, I don't think it ever prevented me from being a customer with that thing. So like, I don't think it was ever enough of an annoyance that it actually made me go look for a different business to support because of the credit card fee. And that's even back then. And at this point in time, I'm totally immune to it. I almost expect it at this point. And I'll have my operations officer say, hey, this, they're charging this fee. Do you want to use a credit card? Do you want to pay with check? And I mean, the thing is with cash, if you've got cash back cards, it pretty much balances out a lot of times anyways. It's easier for me. It's more convenient. It's easier for accounting. And it helps with cash flow because when you pay with a credit card, that bill's not due for a little bit. Whereas when you pay with check or debit card or whatever, it's immediately out of your account. So there's a few different advantages to paying with credit card. And at this point in time, it doesn't even bother me at all anymore. But even before, I don't think it ever caused me to not go to a business. So I think this is one of those examples of us dentists. And I'm going to include myself in this because I don't know if I was fearful so much, but I felt like I felt icky doing it. I felt like I was nickel and diming patients. I felt like I was the bad guy if I was going to do this. I felt like it might make some people unhappy. And I'm not saying that it won't. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. I always tell my team there's no perfect system, but you've got to weigh the pros and cons of each option. So it's like going back to the deposits. Is it better to take a deposit, potentially make some patients upset that they have to put money down up front to book an appointment, but have leverage to make sure that people actually show up for their treatment appointments and your doctor's schedule doesn't fall apart? Or is it better to not charge a deposit, not ruffle any feathers, and have your schedule fall apart and your $10,000 production day turn into a $1,000 production day? Like what is the better alternative? And so I kind of look at it the same way with the credit card fees. And I'm like, okay, especially at this size, what is better to deal with a few, frustrated people here and there because of the new credit card policy? Or is it, and save 6 figures of overhead? Or is it better to keep paying that money ourselves out of our bottom line and not chance ruffling any feathers there? So I think it's that same comparison. Now, here's the thing, guys. Even if you only have, you have one office and it's a smaller office and you're doing less credit card fees, I mean, it's still probably going to save you at least $10,000 or more in these credit card fees every single year. And again, that's not like adding $10,000 production. It's not like, oh, I'll do a few extra Invisalign cases, or I'll do a handful of extra crowns or whatever it is, because every bit of increased revenue has an overhead percentage attached to it. So in order to get that same $10,000, and again, that's like the absolute very low end, we're probably talking tens of thousands of dollars for a lot of you.
Yeah.
But even to get that $10,000, you're probably having to produce significantly more, $20,000, $30,000, depending on if you're the doc and what your overhead is and everything else, to capture that same amount of money. So that $10,000 is literally going right into your pocket. So again, guys, coming from somebody who was very anti pass credit card fees onto patients for the last couple of years, I have kept my mind open. I've listened to others in the industry. I've weighed the pros and cons. I've talked to my leadership team. I've looked at what it could do to our bottom line. And I've made the decision that it is worth rolling out this new system that everyone might not absolutely love, but it's got enough benefits to outweigh the drawbacks of making this change. So
I think there's another side to this too, that there's a huge benefit to everyone involved. And I think if I ask you what your apprehension came from, I think it came from two human elements: your team handling it and patients, right? And actually, I think it's actually like probably one of the best things you can do for patients. And the reason why is, and people are looking at this really odd, is if the practice has more funds and more resources, it can create a better patient experience, have more things to do for the patients. You can buy the right equipment. The more resources the practice has, the better it can serve patients, right? That 3% or 2.9% or 2.1%, whatever it is, if you're utilizing it properly, is actually like a tiny investment from the patient into the practice, because now you have more ability to do more things in the practice because you freed up more resources, right? And every time you find these little centers, it's not, oh, I'm going to save 300 grand this year. I'm going to go buy, an Aston Martin or something stupid. It's, hey, I saved 300 grand. I now can go buy those two iTero scanners so I can scan from one scanner to three. I can scan every patient more efficiently and create a better patient process. Or now this 300 grand is available in the business. That building across the street I've been looking at that has 4 more ops than I have now, I actually have the money after next year to build that out. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a point of resources that benefit everyone involved that comes from finding these profit centers.
Well, you're right. And it's probably a combination of things too. It's probably not 100% just like, oh, I'm going to take this extra. Maybe it is, maybe you're like, hey, I don't want to make any other changes in my practice. I just want to take more money.
Where you are in your life cycle.
And that's fine. And there's nothing to apologize for there. But again, for us, it's not just like, okay, we're going to have this much extra profit, percentage or this much less overhead. It's going to allow us to add more employee benefits in 2025 and hire more leadership team members without it having a huge impact on our bottom line. So we're gonna be able to hopefully maintain our pretty strong EBITDA margin while adding more expenses, because it's going to help offset it. So I mean, it's not just a extra profit necessarily. It can, to your point, allow you to invest in other things that are going to help your practice grow, make your practice better, make life better for your team, whatever it might be. So anyways, I think that's about all I have to say on this segment, guys. If you're interested in looking into this, again, I use Apex Merchant Services. Dr. Zach Almond, he's a dentist. He founded the company. Good guy. We've been using his company for years. And I think, like I said, Nada, I believe, is another one that Dr. Paul uses. So there's a couple different companies you can look into, vet them, see look at your credit card fees. I mean, it's really easy. You should see a monthly charge that comes out of your bank account every single month, and you can add it up very quickly and see how much you're spending each year on credit card fees and how much you can save. But, do some evaluation, decide if it might be the right time to do it for your practice. And maybe it's not, but I think it's good to at least have that discussion and take it into consideration. Because again, I do feel like it's going to become more and more commonplace, and pretty soon I think you're going to be that random practice that's not passing it on. And, at that point in time, I don't know, to me, if it's an industry standard and you're spending all this extra money on something that it makes it tougher to compete. I mean, rising equipment costs, rising supply costs, rising payroll costs, you've got to save money and lower overhead where you can. So,
it's not rising and equal with all those things.
Insurance reimbursements. Yeah.
I mean, listen, guys, a lot of you are hooked on the PPO train and you're worried about passing on credit card fees, right? What is the PPO doing to you on hygiene reimbursements? Like that's where your motivation is, man. That's it right there. You have every right to do this because the insurance companies are not being nice about the reimbursements. They're not rising with inflation. A crown is not $1,200 like it should be, or $1,500 or $1,800. Listen, get the 2.9%.
And whatever you do, guys, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel guilty about it. I mean, go out there, provide a great patient experience, do great dentistry, but don't feel like you have to apologize or feel bad for smart business practices. So,
yeah, awesome. Hey guys, this is another great episode. A subject that is in the Facebook groups and is heated without a doubt. Please like, subscribe, share, follow, leave reviews. Me and Andrew do not get paid for this. We do this because they're subjects that we see in the Facebook groups. We see out there. We see docs talk to us and struggle with it. And we want to kind of put our point of view out there. And I don't know if it's right or wrong or indifferent, but I know that the stuff we talk about, tools and processes, are things that have helped Andrew go from 0 in just a couple of years to coming up on 8 or 9 practices now and build a super group. And I think the knowledge is important to pass on. So thank you guys. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us.